have two more, right?
I'm not quite sure, and unfortunately my connection's going down, but what you say will be off.
Implications of attacking time sources. There's my information. So, I'm a time geek, okay? I grew up reading lots of time-based time books, you know, things, science fiction, lots of movies. Good combination of things.
Where's the Robert Heinlein?
Yes, very interesting stuff. And yes, I do have a TARDIS here for those that really want to see the TARDIS. And bow ties and hell no, I'm not time. Okay? No, but I have this regard to watch it.
Have you taken your shot yet?
Okay. So, one of the things that always piqued my interest is a specific attack that has to do with time of some sort. So, cruising through Slashdot a while back, I suddenly saw this NTP glitch, which set time back. And I started asking the question, what was the impact, where was it? And I started looking at this pretty heavily. I saw that Sands put up some little short thing, yes, this was a problem, kind of downplayed it. We saw a discussion on Active Directory and how a bunch of Active Directory domains had problems, and it disabled Kerberos and authentication and other things. And I said, a time problem, I have to check this out. So the detailed event, anybody from Naval Observatory here? Just checking. I have this. So, everybody knows take and talk. Matter of fact, take and talk are the most common, if you do a search, it's the most common referenced, recommended NTP server to connect to any place. So, I found this kind of interesting. What the problem was is Tick and Talk went a little bit mad. They essentially shifted back 12 years. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? So the collateral damage is that apparently while this was taking place, and I'm still going through the mapping process. By the way, this is an early part of the research I'm doing on this. As I went through it, I found that a lot of organizations really didn't have Stratum 1 or Stratum 0, but they were doing certain things.
November 2012?
Yes. 17. Sorry. So I found it kind of interesting that a lot of people were referring to these as themselves as Stratum 0 or Stratum 1, but they were actually Stratum 2, they were using other sources. And I started asking, what are some of the other questions? Well, the collateral damage issues is a default configuration built across all of our Linux boxes that kills NTP if it has over 1,000 seconds shift. We're going to talk about how to maybe exploit that. So, I went deeper. This is a week's worth of research, searching, things like that. I found that a PBX, they wouldn't tell me what type of PBX, but apparently this PBX went mad, and suddenly from the 70s, digital 70s, that's kind of strange. We also had from this CTI group, I'm not sure who they would be, we also had multiple servers synchronized, Kerberos problems, AD authentication, people trying to get in through VPNs, all kinds of things. File write errors in your cloud service, their authentication service. I found that very interesting. And also we saw a bunch of Juniper routers had problems. And then also discussions with friends. Living in this area, we have lots of friends at Nova Hackers. And it's interesting to have these discussions to say, do you remember this, or can you pull logs on this? It was interesting how many people increased their help desk calls by 4-fold for the staff trying to SSL in. or their creds, their certificates for their web servers suddenly were not valid. Or all of a sudden their DNS cache went to 0. So everybody in the world had to go up to root to do queries. Kind of a problem. I also found that at this time, we had a hurricane going up the East Coast, and we also had a storm on the West Coast. So what I did was I eliminated them from the discussion because that would be too evil to actually do a time attack and actually impact the electrical grid on the East Coast and West Coast while something's going on that would be too evil for even me to think about. So what I did was I found 2 locations that were isolated from a weather standpoint that had a weird problem, but they were never able to describe why it was a problem. It's one of those magic problems. A screwdriver fell into the electrical grid, and magically the part of the West Coast, including San Diego, went black. Things like that. It's interesting. I'm trying to find some more attribution. The big thing is to Google on news issues. And Google isn't always the best source for news issues in this particular space. So what I'm doing is going down all the critical infrastructures. I've gone down water and electrical. I still have 8 more to go to see what the effect is. So this should be real interesting once I finish it. So then the other question I said, okay, which one of you saw this and said, okay, this is cool? So I found out my old friend FX presented it and said, ooh, on the NANDAP list, and discussed it, and then said, turning back the time and expired certificates, we already knew that. And then he made a comment in the presentation in the video that this may be the first throwdown on cyber war. Okay, drink. I said cyber. He actually used the word cyber. Okay, drink. I see you over there.
Have your shot, man.
Number shots.
You need a shot. Yeah. Joe needs a shot.
What really concerned me was when I started doing searches on a lot of public sites, I started ending up with this thing called message not available. This started showing up every place I was looking with different queries. I had to actually go to source files.
Thank you.
And query.
Double shot.
Cheers.
Double shot. Woohoo! So this was kind of interesting, and I also noticed this around a lot of particular internet sites is that a lot of information was deprecated. So maybe something's going on. I don't know. I have not contacted them, so there's no conflict of interest, but I found it kind of interesting. So very quickly, within 1 week, Google made this big announcement that they have this new TrueTime API, and they don't use NTP anymore. They actually use an atomic clock, which, by the way, are very cheap right now. Buy an atomic clock chipset for about $1,200. You get it under $2,000, which is pretty cool. And also GPS location. By the way, one of my other research projects is to find and exploit the GPS to actually shift time. We'll talk about that maybe in the next presentation, because that's pretty cool too. So here's the behavior for NTPD. When you shift time, NTP dies. It kills itself. And then the operating system said, damn, you died, I gotta restart you. And then NTP says, look, I've just changed 12 years. And it accepts it, and that becomes the standard. When? Okay, well, I started thinking about, well, if I was doing a pen test, or if I was doing a whatever, I would say, oh, this could be useful. You know, it would be nice to have an SSL certificate suddenly expire from some set of websites, right? So I found out that if you allow IP DNS spoofing, you can actually set the time. I'm going to show you an example I was using my Android phone and some other devices for. Also because, okay, this is another drink. Did anybody notice I didn't say IPv6 throughout the whole thing? Okay. Well, another please.
Oh!
Two shots.
Feel that.
Feel that? Because NTP doesn't have what they call happy eyeballs, which is what a web server has or web browser has, it doesn't try to figure out V4, V6 transport and then figure out A and quad A records. It only does V6, looks for quad A records and single A records and V4 and whatever. So you have a race condition here. That's kind of time, right? So you have a race condition here, and I don't have a lot of time to talk about the multicasting, but that has some interesting implications too. So, Android behavior. So I said, Android, fun, I have several. What can I do with it? So, when I turned the GPS on, I suddenly noticed that NTP was being queried immediately. What could I do with that? Then the GPS actually dealt with it. So I did a denial service. I basically routed the NTP query to 1.7.0.0.1. It failed, and then my GPS was never able to pick up. So what I did was I then turned around and lied to it. I said I was 6 years ago. Suddenly the GPS came up when it succeeded, and I was not in this area. I was someplace else in the area. So I found that kind of interesting. So NTP spoofing can make your location be someplace else, especially during the initialization of a location-based stuff. So another thing is I had this crazy ZEO program. Okay, I track my sleep. I don't get a lot of sleep, can you tell? I said, let me use my Wi-Fi and spoof this. So I told it that I was going down to 1970, and all of a sudden, do you see the date? Look, I'm old. I wasn't even born then. Okay, so this is really concerning. But it actually the application shifted back to 1920. So that was pretty interesting that we can shift time that far, and unfortunately I don't have time to go through it, but there's actually 4 different time representations based on the application, based on the protocol, based on the operating system. And there's a lot of applications that don't have crossovers, don't understand it, and because of it, they misrepresent this, which makes the time shifting even worse, makes it pretty impractical. So then I started looking. This is part of the research, hopefully for a DEF CON Black Hat speech. Going down all the wireless time protocols. So one of the first things I did was I called up the phone number to get time, and that's still both a dial-up 300, 1200, 2400 baud modem. And I also have the time synchronization. Yes, I know. I saw that. But then we also have radio signals with multiple frequencies that actually put out pulses on a regular basis. Except there's one problem. None of them authenticated. Could this be a problem, especially if you could look at the top of the data center and go, wow, look, they've got an 800 megahertz receive for blah, blah, blah technology. Wouldn't it be cool if I happened to sit here and actually transmit that signal out? Do you think it would mess things up? Maybe. You're not recording a head shake. There we go. Protocols. These are just the 4 major protocols. There's actually another one, PTP, that I'm going into extreme detail with. 4 minutes.
3,
2, 1, contact.
No! I have 10.
Good man.
It's about time, guys.
So anyway, these are the different protocols. Please don't use time protocol. Don't use daytime protocol. But guess what? Our Internet of Things, IoT, whatever stuff, uses BusyBox. What does BusyBox use? time protocol. Use a 32-bit, unassigned, unauthenticated, doesn't do any checking. This could be bad, maybe. So anyway, starting next week, I'm actually going to be fuzzing all these protocols to see both client and server if I can start breaking it. Do I have something on my nose?
Tell me how to exploit something.
Actually, I did back here, but I talked very quickly about it.
Tell me again.
Watch the video.
Here, let me go back in time. Okay.
Difference at 80,000 miles per
Right
hour.
there, you see it? Those three.
Right, I got that.
And it worked very well. And that worked very well. That was basically a wireless access point with the NTP modified, which was pretty fun. And that right there, I got access to a ground and realized that that was pretty broken. So, what I did was to actually understand and create a framework around this so I could write a serious academic, maybe more like a Matt Blaze academic versus the other academic, type presentation. What I did was I started looking at what the time periods are that could be exploitable and could have benefit for the attacker. Well, thank you. So I started thinking about it. Wow, for minutes, Active Directory has a 15-minute timeline. So if you can shift the minutes 15 minutes, and you can do it once every minute, so you basically shift forward, shift back, shift forward. If an administrator is logging in remotely from a, say, VPN of some sort, SSL, IPsec, whatever, they have a little bit of a problem because your user authentication will never actually take, because the certificates can never actually create a start and end time. So I started thinking about that. Certificates are very fun. Cron times. What if I turned around and I never hit midnight? Would my log fill up? Couldn't I overwrite my log? Couldn't I force my log if I went back and forth to zero out for the next 6 weeks? Weird. So then I started looking at production stuff. By the way, do you notice the thing where it says production, milliseconds, financial transactions? There's a congressional discussion that this could be the cause of flash. Another one!
Oh yeah, do it! Do it! Do it!
Here's the type of attacks that I'm doing research on right now, which is how do I go forward and what is the impact? If I go backwards, what if I do long timelines? What is the impact on the processes? And also if I do short timelines, can I actually meet the limit? As an example, the Cisco router is so many hundreds of milliseconds before actually write a syslog. How about if I can retime it so that I can actually never write a syslog for a specific incident? So anyway, this is the research and thank you.
Dude, you're getting that now.
I'm out of here.
3/4. We're not there yet. Come on, man. I've had 6. Actually, I've had 9. Try hard.
Yeah!
Yeah, Drax. Why are you up?
There we go. How do you let your name go? I'm assuming that was the reference.
Drax, say what out.
Right. So next up is going to be Wendy, and she's going to be giving the topic on the screen there. So just before everybody clears out, so tomorrow, what time are we all going to be back here for Fire Talks?
Whenever the fuck I wake up.
There you go. What?
How much did you drink?
I don't know.
Whenever I wake up.
Yeah.